Okay, so this is a great one. Okay, this is used a lot, and I'm going to give it you the main meaning, the way that I usually use it. The expression is, "It'll come out in the wash." Okay, this is a washing machine back here. Okay, and you notice that you know everything goes in there, and you just cover it, and it cleans everything. It doesn't. It doesn't just do things, you know, by the spot, right? You just put the thing in there and put the detergent in there, and it'll clean everything. It doesn't. You don't need to, think about it very much, right? So what that really means is the problem will solve itself. Okay, so if you get home from working construction all day, and your shirt's dirty and your pants are dirty, and you know your wife says, "Wow, you're really dirty," and you say, "So, well, it'll come out in the wash," and you don't have to worry about it. The problem will solve itself when you do the regular laundry, right? So, um, the reason I started to think about this is that rather than go to a gym, I decided to buy some good quality bands, right? And these bands attach to the wall. These bands attach to the wall, and you you anchor them to the wall with this kind of like anchor, you know. Okay, so the tightness of these bands uh, are the determiner of how much tension you have on these bands. Well, when you're training with weights, you you know that if uh, you do 10 reps with a certain weight on each side, with your left hand and your right hand, uh, you're going to get the exact same amount of training. Right? You just count your reps, and you you know exactly uh, what weight you picked up. You would not train with a 15-pound weight in your left hand and a 20-pound weight in your right hand unless you were trying to correct some kind of imbalance. Okay, but most of the time you use the same weight, so you know exactly what you're doing. But bands, and bands are very good. I like training with bands, but the one small disadvantage is when you anchor these separate bands, there's no way of knowing exactly how much tension is on those bands. You can try to get that anchor perfectly in the middle of the bands, but it's not a very precise thing. And it's like, am I leaning a little bit this way? Am I getting more tension on my left side than the right side? And how am I going to do this? And I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, well, if I just continue to work out with these bands, some days I'm going to make a mistake, a slight mistake, favoring my left arm, and some days I'm going to make a mistake slightly favoring my right arm. So, and this goes true for my whole body, lots of different exercises that I do. It's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be imperfect in different ways every time. And sometimes it will benefit one arm or the other, or one leg or the other. And it's going to be wrong, but the kind of the way that it's wrong is going to be different every time. Okay, so I said, okay, it'll come out in the wash. It'll all come out in the wash, which means that the problem will eventually solve itself because it's going to always be a little bit wrong in a different way. It's kind of just going to rotate. Okay? So that also goes true for when I used to work at a language school. I still teach language, but I work at a university. Um, but I used to work at a language school, and if one of the employees somehow didn't come back from lunch or they were a little late, I would go teach their class if I was not busy. Now, theoretically, I don't have to do that, right? they could say, well, you're getting paid, but I could say, well, listen, I'm not scheduled for that, and I could just walk right out this door, and I don't have to be here. But I always did because it's the customer. Okay, you have to take care of the customer. You don't just leave the customer sitting there, right? That's terrible, right? So I would go ahead and do these kind of things. Or if somebody needed a little bit of help with something, I would make a little sacrifice. I would even stop my lunch and go teach the class. And the reason why is because these things always came out in the wash. It never was a good idea to wait for the management to compensate you for making a sacrifice. You always just had to say it'll come out in the wash, and it always did. So maybe 2.5 weeks later, then I would get an empty spot on my schedule, and I still got paid, but I didn't have to do anything. Or maybe somebody covered for me, and they went and taught my classes, and it all just kind of balanced out, and you really couldn't sit there and worry about little things like that, because you have to consider that it's all going to come out in the wash. And it's the same kind of thing like this washing machine back here. The problem will solve itself, right? Eventually. You get one little spot on your shirt, don't worry about it. It'll all come out in the wash. Same goes with relationships. If you're in a trusting relationship, which I've been in some, where I just developed a trust for that person. And there's one girl that I'm thinking about. She made good money. She didn't have to worry about me like precisely paying for more. Sometimes she would pay, sometimes I would pay, and I never even thought about it anymore. I'd say, oh, I'll pay. And it was never like, well, you paid last time, and calculating, well, you paid for the trip, you paid for the plane tickets, but I paid for all the dinners. It was nothing like that. It was just, both of us just had the attitude that it'll all come out in the wash, which means it's going to be unfair for, how can I say it? One time I might pay, and that's unfair for me, but another time she would pay, or maybe the Christmas present she'd get me is a little bit bigger or something like that, and it'll all come out in the wash, right? We didn't think about it. Another example was like that Donald Trump used this expression, it'll all come out in the wash, when they were talking about who is going to pay for the Mexico wall. And Donald Trump said, okay, well, we're going to pay for this, but they're going to pay for some soldiers, and we're going to do this, and it'll all come out in the wash, so don't worry about it, right? We need to get this problem fixed, and we can't sit there and worry about precisely who's paying for what and making everything perfectly fair. Okay. I think I got some pretty good examples. I'm trying to think. Okay, so I wrote this definition down. This is my made definition, but of course I checked it with other sources here. The problem will solve itself because due to things not being perfectly fair each time, okay, each time, maybe I should put a period there, but the person who receives the greater benefit will change each time. Or not the person, but the arm, right? Like, I was talking about using the bands. It's going to be not perfectly fair, but it will sort of rotate and it will balance out over time. Okay. To have a good or satisfactory result, and will turn out eventually. This one, I don't use this very much. It will become known. They're usually talking about some kind of corruption, like or some kind of cheating, but I don't use it that way very much. I usually use it this way, but my definition is better, okay, and more clear. Okay. Let me, I shouldn't have done that.
Love, as in, don't worry about it, love. It'll come out in the wash.
Yeah, which means it'll all, balance out eventually.
Grown up that did kind of come out in the wash.
Okay.
Do not worry about money. That will come out in the wash.
Yeah, which means that everything will work out okay.
You know that sooner or later, it'll come out in the wash.
Could be any one of those things. We'll find out. It'll all come out in the wash. It'll all come out if there is a.
This is talking about something becoming known. Sorry, that's.
Okay. And on the money issue, Trump's saying we will work it out in the formula somehow. It will come out in the wash, and that is okay. And so there it appears that Donald Trump.
Okay, so that's exactly the thing I was talking about, which means we'll figure it out, okay? Who's going to pay for what, and eventually it'll, be a little unfair to each party each time, and everything should be okay.
You speak to it is that sort of sensibility. I think it will come out in the wash. I think people do vote with their.
I don't like that one.
And then the tones will start to come out in the wash.
Okay, and this one, these guys are talking about languages, right? Something about if you just keep studying, and this is kind of true, right? If you just keep studying a language, the problem will solve itself, right? If you just keep studying a language and listening to me speak and keep watching YouTube videos and stuff like that and practicing, then the tones will come out in the wash. You'll just kind of learn it. It's sort of like this. The problem will solve itself, in the end. It means don't worry about it, right? That's what it really means. Don't worry about it. It'll all come out in the wash. So like let's say if you've got some buddies that you go out drinking beer with, right? And you got a new guy who's come into your group, and the new guy doesn't understand your beer sharing system where each person takes turns buying a beer, and then one guy will buy some wings and another guy will buy some shots, and they've got this kind of chaos system, but everybody trusts it will all come out in the wash. So you got the new guy who comes in and he goes, oh wait, I bought this and you bought this, and you tell the new guy, don't worry about it, it'll all come out in the wash. Let's say, for example, in Japan, people will buy a lot of different dishes, right? And they share. They each kind of like share, they buy a whole bunch of different dishes, and each person will share, and then they divide up the cost. And most of the time, people try not to worry about this guy's drinking a little bit too much, right? He drank more. That's not fair. There's always some kind of like resentment, but oftentimes people are like, don't worry about it. It'll all come out in the wash if we go drinking enough times. Or I might eat a little bit more and he drinks a little bit more. It'll all come out in the wash. Okay? Great idiom. Okay? So I will talk to you on the next idiom.